If you think putting a dome over Lambeau Field is a really dumb idea, you're not alone. The people of Green Bay have been asked about this a lot over the years, and most of them agree with you. However, some of the massive names in Green Bay history who floated the idea might just surprise you. Curly Lambeau, in fact, was the first person in Packers history to float the idea of roofing pro football stadiums. In an article with Jack Cuddy in 1943, Curly predicts stadiums will start getting roofs after the war. But the most important part of this article is why. He explained that most pro tickets are sold on the day of the game, whereas most seats for college games are sold in advance. You see, to Curly, this issue was deeply personal. Only 21 years earlier, Curly saw two weather events that caused catastrophic financial losses, which resulted in him giving the team over to the people of Green Bay. Let's rewind to 1922, and the Packers have lost money on 3 of 5 of their last games. The weather was such an issue that the Packers had rain insurance to insure themselves against bad gate receipts in the event of a bad downpour. November 5th, the Columbus Panhandlers come to town, led by manager and then league president Joe Carr. And guess what? Half an hour before kickoff, the heavens opened. The field became a muddy swimming pool. The Packers might have won 3-0, but they lost a further $1,500. And the painful part is that the Packers were 1/100th of an inch short of claiming on their rain insurance. An article in the Green Bay Press-Gazette spelled out the really grim situation. The team was now $3,400 in the red. So, how can the Packers be saved? 2 things. Number 1, raise ticket prices. And number 2, organise a booster Thanksgiving game and promote the living hell out of it. Thanksgiving arrives, Duluth, the team they're against, show up, but unfortunately they bring the rain with them. In the wee hours of the morning, the heavens open again, and it soon turns into 46-mile-per-hour winds. Calhoun wrote, one of the smallest crowds of the season were in attendance, and club management were deeper in the hole. The game was almost called off. Curly Lambeau, George Whitney Calhoun, they go down to the Green Bay Press-Gazette headquarters where they bump into General Manager Andrew Turnbull. He asks them not to cancel the game because he knows that if they do, football in Green Bay will be no more. He promises to bail the team out financially and gather businessmen if they go ahead and make sure that they play this game. True to his word, Andrew Turnbull rallies local businessmen and support, and the Green Bay Football Corporation is born. The Green Bay Packers now belong to the fans. You see, Curly Lambeau was a visionary. But when he saw the idea of dome stadiums, he wasn't looking into the future. Curly Lambeau was looking back into his past. Now, let's fast forward to August 1966, and Vince Lombardi, of all people, tells the Green Bay Press-Gazette that he's considering a dome over Lambeau Field. He even detailed how it would work and how long it would take to build. And a year later, the Packers hosted the famous or infamous Ice Bowl. At Lambeau, when the heating coils failed and they took the tarpaulin off too early, the field froze into an ice rink. Despite Dallas thinking it was some massive conspiracy theory that was deliberately done by Vince Lombardi,
our field is going to be in good shape because unless something happens to that electric blanket we have out there, I'm thinking sometime maybe I ought to go out and pull a switch to cut down on the
power bill.
Cut down on that speed that the Dallas team has.
Lombardi himself was absolutely livid.
They said, somebody's got to go tell Lombardi. I'd rather had to go in there and tell him that his wife was running around on him than do that, because he was not a happy man.
Before Dome Mania kicks off in earnest in the 1980s, we see the mention of the Lambeau Dome again in 1978 in the local papers during a Lambeau Field turf inspection. Clarence Neer is quick to torpedo the idea. End of discussion. 30 seconds. In 1981, after some of the Packers executive committee visit the Silver Dome, the story of a domed Lambeau Field comes up again. In fact, Geiger Associates, specialists in air-supported domes, said that some of the Packers executive committee reached out to them but ultimately refused to do an official feasibility study. 3 months later, stadium domes are headline news in Sports Illustrated. In fact, Geiger Associates are all over this article touting that stadium domes could be built absolutely anywhere. They could be built at the bottom of the sea, they could be built in the desert, they could be built on the moon where there's no atmosphere whatsoever. And I would say, if you wanted to build a dome over somewhere with zero atmosphere, they should just go ahead and build one over Soldier Field. Despite the Packers allegedly refusing the idea to do an official feasibility study and one of the Packers executive committees coming out in the April newspapers rubbishing the idea, an incredible find by Glenn Christensen decades after shows a feasibility study actually was done. Dated August 1982, the document showed what the dome concept would have looked like. The story shows its head in the papers from time to time, like this opinion piece in 1986, but we don't see an artist rendering again in the newspapers until 1992. It becomes front-page news in the Green Bay Press Gazette as some sort of a counter-argument to the idea of building an arena in the area. It's mostly panned by pollsters, except Minnie Smith, who says, "I've no idea, I don't even watch baseball or any other games on TV." Bless. Interestingly, Bob Harlan is in the news and he rejects the idea, saying that it's bad for fans, it's bad for players, and it's too expensive. However, later, as the Packers are floating the idea of raising sales tax for renovations, Bob Harlan is seen as promoting the idea in this Buffalo Courier news article. To me, this all seemed like a bit of a clever ploy, that Bob Harlan was saying this to try force through the idea of these renovations instead of the idea of doming Lambeau Field. It all appears like the domed stadium idea has been put to bed, but enter Tom Dobesh. In February 2000, Tom Dobesh appears at a public opinion meeting, equipped with his domed stadium drawings. When the Packers refuse to entertain his plan B, he gets busy gathering a petition with signatures to force through his idea, and gathering a coalition of businesses who would later go on and refuse that they were actually working with him. There's never a dull moment in 2000 with poor Tom Dobesh. We see him get arrested outside polls, we see him also feature in two really unflattering articles that seem like hit pieces on his character. And the saga ultimately comes to an end in November that year when the courts strike out his petition and say it is invalid. The referendum that passed in September definitely seems to be the final nail in the coffin of the domed stadium. But did that referendum raise another important issue? So Lambeau Field's naming rights can be sold, huh? Interesting.